Well, Kenny, here we are again at the Ask Kenny. And I think the question we have today is related to the one that went before it, concerning why did God make it all when he knew it was all going to go pear-shaped. The question today is, why do we still suffer the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin? I'll repeat that. Why do we still suffer the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin?
I think it's a superb question, first of all. I think it's really, and there's, the more I've been thinking about it, there's two ways that we can think about it, all revolving around who the we actually is. Is it we, mankind, or is it we as believers? Why do we believers still suffer the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin? And I'll try and deal with them both relatively briefly, I hope. But the first one for mankind, and there's a sense of fairness in it. Why is it fair that we suffer because of what Adam and Eve did when we didn't do it? They did it, which again I think is it's a logical question, a real question that erupts from Scripture. But Scripture does teach in Romans 5, 1 Corinthians 15, it speaks about a thing called federal headship, and what's effectively being spoken about here in the sense of mankind is that doctrine that we know is referred to as original sin, in that Adam sinned, but he stood as a representative for all of us who would come later. He kind of the fountain where everything that came later, and because he fell and sinned, the consequences of that is passed down through the generations that come later. So earlier on today, I stood at a graveside. There was the consequences of Adam's sin, because God said, if we disobey against him, we will surely die. And every generation has known the reality of death. And the reason why we suffer the consequences is because Adam stood as our head, our representative. And I suppose we might not think that's fair, but it's true in every other area of life. Again, at this funeral today, I looked at the sister of the young guy who was buried, and she was standing beside her mum, and what I said to her is, you look identical to your mother, which she then said, you're a fine one to talk, you look identical to your father, and we do both look like our parents. And there's things that are passed down from parent to child. Sin, original sin, is something that is passed down because he stood as our representative. But I think if we were able to choose someone to stand as our representative, we would have chosen Adam. He had everything going for him. He was literally in an Edenic paradise. He'd never done anything wrong before. Everything was going for him in that sense. And yet when Adam fell, we all fell in him. And it still doesn't sound fair until you bring another bit in, which is in Romans 5 and 1 Corinthians 15, which is there was another man. So whilst through Adam death and sin came and all the consequences of sin, in this other one who's referred to as the last Adam, all the blessings of God are available. And what we're told is, if by faith we embrace the last Adam, we got all the blessings of God. So we didn't earn them, but we get them all. So it kind of balances the scales a bit. So all the consequences of sin come upon us. All the consequences of Christ's obedience come upon us by faith. So we get to choose, as it were, all the blessings of God. So that's how those two chapters kind of deal with the consequences of Adam's sin, but balance the scales because of the last Adam. But I think the question can also be taken off, why do we as believers still suffer the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin? We still die. Our friends, loved ones still die. We live in a world where the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin is still here. The earth is still groaning. That volcano that's erupting in the Canary Isles is still the earth groaning, longing for the liberation that will come when Christ returns. And in answer to that slightly more nuanced question, Christ hasn't returned yet. And we're in the already but the not yet kingdom. And one day, like you mentioned in the last question that you answered, we will see Christ. And in that moment, all the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin will be removed once and for all. So they're kind of the two answers to that one question that I kind of thought was kind of made sense in my strange brain anyway, so hope that helps somebody.